You're gonna hate me, but I kind of hate Pokemon Legends Arceus. Let me explain. I've been a Pokemon fan for a while, so you better believe I was ready to buy the game on day one. A few days later, when Target was back in stock, I turned the game on. When I first began playing the game, I just kind of acknowledged it as a worse looking version of Breath of the Wild, like probably everyone else who played this game. But I was willing to overlook this, just for what the game promised moving forwards. This was something new, and I was ready to jump right in. Even when numbers like these exist. Ouch. So after some admittedly poorly paced setup, as well as a few tutorials, the game sets you free. And, well, it was magic. These first couple hours of the game were spent goofing off in the main area and taking full advantage of the complexity of the new Dex recording system, and I was enjoying every second of it. Of course, there were minor issues, mostly visual, like the ride Pokemon not wanting to cooperate sometimes, but to me this just felt like nitpicking a small lack of polish in what was largely a fresh experience. So I progressed through the story, earning my way into the second area. My reaction here was pretty much the same, only the graphics looked better here? Maybe it was just the change in lighting, but I still think this mud show looks closer to the real world, if our topic of comparison is Florida. Anyway, the third area was next, and this time I was impressed by the story. Of course, Pokemon has to appeal to every demographic they can for reasons, but I felt like they did a decent job covering topics like death and loss. And then the fourth zone rolled around. At this point I was hyped. I was ready for a continuation of what was already a solid experience. But first, we need to recap some of the strengths of this game, or various gameplay factors that all combined together to make what I thought was, and would continue to prove, a solid experience. I think the factors that make this game at the very least good can be limited to a number of three. Obviously, there are more factors some of you watching might be drawn to. Some of you might like the music, and of course there's someone out there that praises the graphics. But a video game has to appeal to an audience, and if the audience is largely mixed about the appeal of one of these factors, I can't reasonably put it onto my list. For instance, the music is no slouch, but a lot of people don't like how minimalistic it can be at times. And the graphics, well, they are graphics. So here's the three factors I think I can confidently say make this game at the very least good. Catching system, or the way you obtain Pokemon. Target variety, or the variation in Pokemon you catch. And lastly, reward, or what you get for catching these Pokemon. And the last thing we need to cover before we move on is why these three factors are so important to this game. Almost every other feature this game has is mediocre. For instance, if you were to remove the Pokemon from the map, you'd be left with a very sloppy resource collection game in an overworld made in the Roblox creator. It's the addition of the catching system, the target variety, and the reward behind it all that all add together to make this game so memorable for so many people. So with all that out of the way, allow me to explain why I hate this game. The catching system at first can't be scrutinized too heavily. This game mechanic was probably prioritized, and it shows. The reward behind it all also can't be examined at first, because neither of these issues tackle the most important aspect of Pokemon. Let's go back to the Stone Age and imagine a world where Pokemon Red dropped with, say, the 3 starters as the entire Pokédex. Why do we do this? Because under these conditions, Pokemon wouldn't be nearly as popular as it is today. Pokemon is all about building a varied and distinct team, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. It's about having options to catch, because otherwise, catching them all wouldn't be as rewarding. It's about delaying monotony, otherwise any catching system won't feel engaging. It's about target variety. Let's go back to my playthrough as I entered World 4. So there I was, a wide-eyed, younger me, ready to add a new, unique member to my team. And the first Pokemon I found in this new zone was Luxio. Its pre-evolution, Shinx, is the third Pokemon you find in the game. We touched on this number earlier, but we need to go back to it. Before World 4, I was impressed with how diverse the Pokemon were. I never thought twice about the number because it was rarely an issue in Worlds 1 to 3. But it was at this moment, when I realized what Game Freak did to cut even more corners, that my eyes were opened. There's a lot of repeat Pokemon in this game. The worst part is, this isn't exclusive to just one Luxio at the start of the Coronet Highlands. Repeat Pokemon run rampant. The night spawns are mostly identical. Bidoof, the literal first Pokemon of the first area, pops up in 2 other areas, including the final area of the game. No, the target variety isn't a problem at first, just like it wasn't for me at the start of the game, but that's because everything you're seeing at that point is brand new. Once you're done with one area and you're ready to explore the rest of what the game has to offer, it's really degrading when most of what you're shown is the exact same thing you just saw. Obviously, Game Freak couldn't perfectly amend this problem. For instance, if every Pokemon appeared in only one area, accessibility would be an issue. To solve a problem in a game, you can't go too far with the solution, otherwise you create even more problems. But you also can't do too little. A perfect game mechanic could be seen as the equilibrium between 2 extremes of a problem, and this definitely wasn't achieved in the context of target variety. There's really only 2 ways to solve this problem: decrease the scope of the overworld, which would spark a lot of complaints, or add more Pokemon. We'll come back to the last solution later, but for now we need to look at how the lack of target variety destroys both the catching system and the rewards behind it all. The catching system is a lot like Mario Kart 8. It's fun to throw Pokeballs at a Pokemon, just like it's fun to drift around a corner. But in Mario Kart, you don't drive down a blank room. Just like in Pokemon, you don't throw Pokeballs at thin air. These game mechanics are only fun because of how they're applied to the backbone of the game, whether that be the courses or the target variety. I think my biggest problem with Mario Kart 8 is the lack of variety between the tracks. Sure, it's fun to pop the game in and just mindlessly play for a minute or 2, but at some point you realize you're playing the same courses over and over again. And it's still fun, I guess, it just loses a lot of appeal. Even though this comparison is pretty apt, there's one reason why Mario Kart still holds weight, while Pokemon falters. Mario Kart requires you to be technically advanced. Compare the inputs I make in one game versus the other. So where does the appeal for Pokemon come in? Well, the Pokemon. Game Freak did a really good job making it feel like the Pokemon you catch are actual living creatures instead of lines of code. It distracts from the low amount of technical proficiency required because you're interacting with a pocket monster, not a video game. But there's only so many conversations you can have with someone on a road trip before it gets stale. At some point, you need to shake things up a bit. This is where the rest of the Pokemon come in. You basically swap the other person in the conversation out with someone else, making the experience a lot more memorable. This is how the catching system delays monotony. The problem is, this entire system relies on the backbone of target variety. If that field is lacking, it doesn't matter if you enjoy conversations. You'll eventually run out of things to talk about and just kind of scroll through memes or something. I don't know. The final factor we need to look at today is the reward the game gives you for catching Pokemon, and there's 2 main subcategories under this: Pokédex and Pokédollars. The game did a good job making the Pokédex feel important. If Game Freak designed the game in a way that the Pokédex is completed instantly upon capture, people would rag on the game for going by too quickly. But the system they designed for global release actually works pretty well. At least until we apply target variety back into the mix. Once you're done with all the research tasks for one Pokemon, you're done with that Pokemon. There's almost nothing else to do with it because there's no point. You literally did everything there is to do. This is why a variety of Pokemon is so important to this game. Without it, Game Freak reuses Pokemon in later areas, and once you see it again, it really just feels like filler. The other reward you get is Pokédollars, which can be used for a number of things, namely increasing bag size or buying resources and tools. And there's nothing wrong with this system. It's a perfectly fine supplement to the main gameplay. But that just means it hinges on the main gameplay being distinct and memorable. Otherwise, this supplementary system is aiding something in a way that doesn't solve its problems, and we'll come back to this theme later. Like, sure, if you gave me a waffle while playing this game, it helps, I guess, but it doesn't make the game any better. So let's come back to our 3 main factors that make this game good: the catching mechanics, the target variety, and the rewards. My main problem with all 3 of the categories is just how quickly they lose traction over time, but that doesn't necessarily mean I hate the game. The gameplay is still fun for a good while. So why do I go so far as to say I hate this game? To answer this question, we need to return to the topic of how Game Freak can fix the problem of target variety, and the only conclusion I came to was adding more Pokemon. Mario Kart 8 actually was revealed to have more tracks added in updates as time progressed, which solved my semi-problem of lack of variety. So when I heard the news that there would be a Pokemon online event, I was crossing my fingers. They just released a new adventure that lacked polish. The obvious choice is to polish it up after release with updates, or dare I say, DLC. But what I got was the exact opposite. Pretty much all we got in Legends Arceus was a new mechanic to shake up the way you catch Pokemon that didn't solve the core problem. And then, disaster struck. So many people love this reveal. Good for them. And I can agree that these games look pretty good, but this is the problem. At first I speculated that Game Freak rushed Legends Arceus so that it wouldn't have to compete with Breath of the Wild 2, but now I know that's not the case. I don't think the chronological placement of the reveal of Generation 9 was arbitrary. Game Freak knew that the announcement of the next major adventure would hurt the sales of Legends Arceus. So instead of holding off on the announcement and giving Legends Arceus the amount of polish it needs, they instead did what everyone expects them to do. The bare minimum. They released a game, and while it can be enjoyed by the vast amount of the player base, without the fixes the game desperately needs, the stagnation that the players will inevitably experience can't be ignored. There's only two options that Game Freak gave to the player base. Either spend another $60 on another Pokemon adventure, or try to milk all the enjoyment you can out of your already owned, underpowered product. I still think that Legends Arceus is a good game, just with a bad aftertaste. But when we factor in Game Freak's attitude towards its player base, it just compounds into one sentiment I can't shake. I kind of hate Pokemon Legends Arceus, and most likely, you're going to hate me for saying that. Regardless, I'm not sure if I can continue to support a company that treats Pokemon not as a video game to invest your time into, but as the next product to spend your money on.